Thank you for staying with us. If you've just joined us, it's a very good afternoon. Small businesses are often seen as the backbone and the saviour of the economy. However, operators of these small businesses don't often have time for coaching and mentoring. Let's now chat to leadership speaker Lionel Marumahoko, who joins me here in the studio. Lionel, very good afternoon. Appreciate you coming on to the show. I suppose, first up, let's talk about your 25 years across the globe looking after 30 different territories. Is there a common thread to how business is done across a continent, across the world?
Absolutely, absolutely. But first of all, thank you for inviting me today. But absolutely, when you start to think about it, there's some key fundamentals that relate to whether you're a small business or big business. I think the key fundamental is really the fact that, everything begins and ends with the consumer. So having that deep understanding of the consumer is key and fundamental. And above that is also understanding the opportunity and be able to size it becomes very critical. And when you start to think about the consumer, or rather the customer, it's really looking at it from two fronts. There's an internal customer and an external customer. How do you get to understand the customer, the human being behind the customer? That's a key fundamental, because that allows you to understand the sweet spot that allows you to drive what is key and fundamental, which is the ultimate customer experience. Because if you look at research shows us that 86% of customers will pay a premium if the ultimate customer service is at the right level. And 30% will actually walk away. So it's very key, whether you're a small business or a large business, to deliver that ultimate customer experience. And then also, what's also important is there's an internal customer as well. The internal customer is also key, and that's part of your team, and making sure that they are taken care of, because ultimately it boils down to one thing, which is execution.
Well, let's bring things closer to home. Let's talk about South Africa and SMMEs, which are, as much as our big companies, are struggling at the moment. Obviously, the power outages, the economic downturn, and many other issues. Now, how critical is innovation as a strategy for survival for any businesses, SMMEs in particular?
Yeah, I think innovation is the backbone of any business, whether SME or large business. And I think it's very important that SMEs get to a point where they embrace innovation. If you start to think about it, if you want to buy a house today, you probably look at 100 houses, and then you like 10 houses, and out of those 10, you pick one. So what this says is that if you're an SME, you've got to embrace the whole notion of, lining up bets that you actually focus on, right? And out of those bets, if you have 10 bets that you have, out of those bets, at least one will come out. So having that innovative mindset is very important. And I would also argue that if you're an SME, you've got to learn to compete with yourself. That is where you're ultimately focusing on improving yourself, but also understanding what's actually happening in the market. One of the shortcomings with SMEs, something that they need to embrace, is the fact that if you're an SME, you've got to understand that you've got a limitation. And this is why it's important that you embrace the notion of coaching and mentorship, because that will help you identify some of the gaps that you have, your blind spots, and help you to move yourself forward.
Now, my next question is around the township economy. I mean, if you look at a place like Soweto, it has many millions that are living there. Now, how do small to medium enterprises capture those numbers? When they're fighting against the likes of Sandton City or Mall of Africa, where individuals seem to prefer to shop for certain products away from their own communities.
Yeah, I think we can't ignore the township market, because it's key and fundamental. And I would almost argue that if you're a small to medium enterprise business, you've got to embrace innovation. And one of the aspects around innovation is innovation could mean strategic partnerships that you can form with other large companies. Because large companies that are coming into Africa are actually working closely with smaller businesses in actually driving their business. So the reverse is also possible, that if you're a small business, you've got to embrace some of those aspects and create some of those strategic partners.
Well, you worked for Coca-Cola for 25 or 30 years. How open are the large conglomerates to partnering with small businesses, small businesses in the townships, for instance?
Absolutely. I think as we speak today, large corporations are embracing and creating strategic partnerships with smaller businesses. So I think, again, it's really about understanding a business model. So for SME, I'll speak about innovation, but also understanding business models. So some of these business models allows you, even as an SME, to embrace and create strategic partnership with big businesses. That's also important.
Now let's talk about Africa and the opportunity that it offers. You know, we've got the Africa Free Trade Area and Agreement, which was signed several months ago. At a time where South Africa or some African countries are facing challenges, you know, whether it's load shedding, the economy, etc., and companies are looking to shut down, does the continent offer some form of respite? Should companies that are struggling at the moment because there's insufficient business or they're having to deal with the specific challenges look to the continent for business or for growth?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that I always encourage SMEs is that as your business is struggling, you also need to understand that your consumer, your customer is also struggling. And what is important is to pay attention to some of the concerns and the issues that your customers are facing, and then embrace that, and through that, you're able to innovate and change your business model to suit the needs of your current consumers. Because sometimes it's very important to win in your local market before you start to think about expansion. I think expansion as well is a very good move in that Africa in itself presents huge opportunities for geographic expansion. And again, it boils down to getting the right advice in terms of how you actually do that. And it comes back to establishing the right business model that allows you to do that.
What about the whole mentality around growth in the African continent? Because globally, when you read the news or you have conversations, everyone across the globe is looking to Africa as a place of growth. On the continent, we don't seem to be appreciating or understanding all of that. I mean, the African Free Trade Continental Agreement was only officially signed, I think, in the last 18 to 24 months. But Europe and the West and China, in fact, have already seen the potential of Africa many, many years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you start to think about it, you know, if I'm a foreign company looking at Africa, it's the last frontier if you think about it. If you think about the low per capita that we have, if I'm into, if I do fridges, I'll be looking at Africa because the penetration of fridges is very low. So that's the last frontier. And it cuts across many aspects. And if you look at the technology adoption that's taking place in Africa, it's at unprecedented level. And it creates a platform for these multinational companies to come in. What I would say is that if you are a small business, you actually need to embrace some of these notions around what is happening with some of these big businesses and focus around creating some of those strategic partnerships. And it comes back to having a business model that allows you to be able to do that. But again, it's very important that a lot of these businesses seek mentorship and coaching that allows them to be able to see beyond what they see on a daily basis.
So what are the determining factors on who's your mentor, who's your coach? What should one look out for?
Well, I really think that everyone needs to embrace the notion that even as I sit here, I've got limitations, right? And there are things that I do, I've got blind spots. So as a person, I also have to get a mentor. Even as a business has limitations. And you need to be able to embrace that. Because through that, this is where the innovation and the creativity comes in for you to be able to move forward. Because otherwise, you actually hit a cap in terms of how you think about it.
So my question is, if I'm a small to medium enterprise, how do I determine who's a good mentor and who's not? Or who should my mentor be? What do I need to look out for?
Yeah, I think what you need to look out for is the aspect that you need to understand where you are first and foremost, and be able to look out and see whoever brings to the table what you actually do not have, what actually takes you to the next level. So it has to be somebody who provides you that inspiration, or somebody who brings you the aspects that you believe are relevant for your business. And the key thing is that even if you're an SME, there's a lot that you can learn from big businesses, because they have incredible systems and processes, and they have tools and systems that allows them to be able to scale their businesses to a very large level. So again, if I'm a small to medium enterprise business, I would reach out to people that have had that exposure and be able to reach out and try to engage them in making sure that you're able to move your business to the next level.
I'm going to give you 60 seconds to respond to my final question, and that's around funding. A lot of small businesses have remarkable ideas or great businesses with potential to grow, but the issue always is around funding. How do you work around that? Because the system in South Africa does not always readily support small to medium enterprises, especially if they have no or limited collateral.
Yeah, I would say that, money is a commodity, and money follows good ideas. One of the shortcomings that I find with SMEs across Africa is the ability to be able to put together a pitch document that is compelling enough, that is bankable, that allows those with fundings to actually unlock that. And it's very important that, again, you get the kind of help that you actually require. And a lot of times it's not necessarily about funding. Sometimes it's about strategic partnerships, as I mentioned earlier on, and a lot of times it's about getting the right guidance that allows you to move beyond your own limitations that you have.
Lionel Marumahoko, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.